When the world is attacked by alien creatures known as Kaijus, it is up to Jaeger pilots like Riley to help get rid of them before they take over the Earth. In the year 2013, massive creatures called Kaijus emerged from an interdimensional portal at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. When they started wreaking havoc in the world, leaders around the world decided they needed to put aside their differences and join hands to combat the creatures. Hence, the world's government built Jaegers, giant robots that were controlled by two pilots whose minds were linked via a neural bridge. Two brothers, Riley and Yancy, became pilots for the Jaegers, intent on helping the world fighting Kaijus. One night, Riley gets woken up by an alarm sounding off. He gets up and wakes his brother as the two of them quickly change and head towards the area where the Jaegers are being kept. They are helped into their suits, and then a neural connection is initiated. The neural connection was also called the drift, because this allowed both of the pilots to drift through each other's memories. The neural bridge made sure that each of the pilots operated one side of the Jaeger. Once the two brothers are ready, their Jaeger is launched, and they step into the Pacific Ocean. There, they spot a ship caught in the middle of a hurricane caused by a kaiju and decide to rescue them. Riley manages to grab the ship and get them out of danger. Just then, a kaiju arises from behind them and launches an attack aimed at them. The two of them manage to block the attack, and a furious battle ensues. Finally, the brothers charge up the Jaeger's weapon, which delivers an electric shock-like blow. They land a hit on the kaiju and he goes down. Yancy reaches back to the control room and informs them they have managed to take down a level 3 kaiju. Sometime later, Marshal Pentecost informs them that they have received a signal that the kaiju is still alive. All of a sudden, the kaiju catches them off guard and attacks. It manages to damage the Jaeger's left arm, which is being operated by Yancy. The kaiju continues attacking them and manages to completely break off the arm, leaving Yancy exposed. Just when he is about to give Riley instructions on their next attack, the kaiju grabs Yancy and kills him. Despite the devastating loss of his brother, Riley fights back and delivers another blow to the kaiju. Back at the control center, the command loses signals of the kaiju and Riley's Jaeger. The next day, Riley's Jaeger collapses on the shore where an old man and his grandson find him. 5 years later, Category 4 kaiju started emerging from the portal. The world's government informs Pentecost that the Jaegers are getting destroyed quicker than they can build them, and that their program will not receive further funding, because they want to focus more on building a wall to keep the kaijus out. He is told that he can take his program to Hong Kong, where the portal is located until the wall is built. Meanwhile, a large wall starts getting built near the coast. Riley, who had retired as a pilot, was now working as a construction worker and was helping them build the wall. One morning, his boss announced that he needed volunteers to work on top of the wall, an area where the work conditions were extreme, and men often lost their lives. Back at the control center, Pentecost tells his men that he will not go down without a fight, and that he has come up with a plan to get rid of the kaijus once and for all. The next day, Pentecost travels to Riley and greets him. He asks the former Jaeger pilot to come work for him again. Riley turns down his offer and tells Pentecost that his brain was still attached to his brother's while he was getting killed by the Jaeger. The trauma was too much for him to recover from. Pentecost then reveals that the world has very limited Jaegers left, and one of the old models, a Mark III, could only be piloted by him. However, Riley still does not budge and refuses to come back. Pentecost informs him that the world is ending and everyone is going to die either way. He could do it by waiting for the kaijus to attack, or he could fight them off. Finally, after much persuasion, Riley agrees to join Pentecost and heads to Hong Kong. There, he is introduced to the team, including Dr. Newton, who is a genius scientist, and Pentecost's adopted daughter, Mako. He tells Riley that they only have 4 Jaegers left, which they plan on using to fight with the kaijus. Pentecost claims that they have been planning on attacking the portal where the kaijus have been emerging from, but Riley does not think this is a good idea. He says they have tried using the same strategy before and it did not work out. Pentecost assures him that he has a solid plan that he is sure will work. There, Mako asks Pentecost if she can co-pilot with Riley, but he immediately turns her idea down and tells her that she is not ready to face a kaiju yet. Sometime later, Riley is taken to a small room where candidate trials are held to pick the best co-pilot for him. He manages to take down all the candidates. Seeing this, Mako offers to fight against Riley. and to everyone's surprise, she ends up defeating him and manages to impress Riley. He tells Pentecost that he wants Mako to be his co-pilot, but he refuses. Meanwhile, Dr. Newton, against Pentecost's orders, decides to form a neural bridge with part of a Kaiju's brain. He begins seeing flashes of different images until it becomes too much for his body to continue with the connection. Pentecost visits Mako in her room, who is upset with him for not letting her co-pilot. He tells her that he had promised her that she could get revenge on Kaijus for taking away her parents. This is why he agrees to let her co-pilot with Riley. Soon, it is time for them to activate and connect with the Jaeger. Just then, another scientist named Gottlieb approaches Pentecost and tells him about Dr. Newton's findings. Dr. Newton tells Pentecost that Kaijus are getting sent to the world by aliens who want to take over Earth. They plan on continuing to send stronger Kaijus until all of humankind is killed. Pentecost tells him to form a neural bridge once again with a new Kaiju brain that he will find with a man named Hannibal Chow to get as much information as possible. At the base, Mako and Riley manage to establish a connection. However, Mako ends up getting stuck inside a memory from the day her parents were killed. She was rescued by Pentecost. Riley witnesses the whole memory with her and tries to get her to snap out of it, but Mako is too far gone. Suddenly, Mako unconsciously activates the Jaeger's weapon and gets ready to shoot. The men in the control room jump into action and cut off all the connections with the Jaeger before it gets out of control. During this time, Mako begins to feel overwhelmed with a rush of Riley, Yancy, and her memories, causing the connection to fail. A disappointed Pentecost dismisses Mako and tells Riley that he needs to find another co-pilot. All of a sudden, an alarm in the control room begins to go off. The automated voice tells everyone that 2 Category 4 Kaijus have emerged out of the portal. Pentecost decides to send the other Jaeger pilots to counter them, but keeps Riley at the base since he needs to find a new co-pilot. Meanwhile, Dr. Newton manages to find Hannibal Chow, who deals with the Kaiju body parts. He is fascinated to see how Hannibal has managed to preserve the body parts and even the parasites that lived on a Kaiju's body. When Hannibal asks Dr. Newton who sent him, he tells him that he cannot reveal his source, but that he needs a Kaiju brain to form a neural connection. Meanwhile, one by one, all the Jaegers are released into the Pacific Ocean and they begin attacking the Kaiju. The first Jaeger immediately gets destroyed because the Kaiju has evolved and gotten much stronger than anyone could have anticipated. When the second Jaeger approaches the Kaiju, it manages to land one blow before the Kaiju fires an acid-like liquid at them, which causes the Jaeger to short-circuit. Then, the third Jaeger is deployed, and it begins fighting with the Kaiju, causing it to fall back into the water. All of a sudden, the Kaiju releases an electromagnetic wave that causes all of the lights to go out everywhere, including the control center and the last Jaeger. Riley, who had been watching this, asked Pentecost to let him and Mako go and fight off the Kaiju before it kills them. At first, Pentecost does not agree, knowing that Mako has no real combat experience. But since he is left with no choice, he agrees, when Riley points out that his Jaeger is an old version and is not digital, which means the electromagnetic wave will not cause any harm to them. Mako and Riley quickly prepare themselves and then are released into the ocean. As soon as the Kaiju notices them, it starts heading towards them. However, before it can attack, Mako and Riley launch the first attack. After a furious battle, they manage to defeat the Kaiju. In the city center, another Category 4 Kaiju is wreaking havoc. Dr. Newton and Hannibal watch as it destroys the city. Hannibal tells Dr. Newton that the aliens who are responsible for controlling the Kaiju are smart. He then informs Dr. Newton that establishing a neural bridge is not a one-way process, and the Kaiju was connected to his brain as well, which meant that the aliens now knew that he had looked into their history. At the same time, they also knew everything they could find in his memories about human beings. He concludes that the Kaiju in the city center are heading towards them with one goal in mind, which is to kill Dr. Newton. Just then, Mako and Riley arrive in the city as well and launch another attack on the Kaiju before it can get to Dr. Newton. However, this time, they are not able to immediately defeat it. Suddenly, the Kaiju grabs their Jaeger and begins flying towards the sky. Before it can take the Jaeger out of the atmosphere, Mako and Riley activate a sword and cut the Kaiju in half. Before they can fall onto the surface, they activate their power booster and manage to land safely. Then, Dr. Newton arrives at the scene where the dead Kaiju's body has fallen. He goes to take the Kaiju's brain, but as soon as the men inside its stomach get closer, they hear a heartbeat. and suddenly another kaiju emerges out of the dead kaiju's womb and jumps toward Dr. Newton. It's about to reach Dr. Newton when the new kaiju chokes on its umbilical cord and goes down. That's when Hannibal shows up and tells Dr. Newton that he is just a baby and is not going to survive. However, before he can finish his sentence, the kaiju opens its mouth and kills Hannibal. At the base, Pentecost orders for the remaining 2 Jaegers to be brought to 100% functionality. He tells Riley that he plans on going to the portal himself, along with Mako and Riley, so that he can detonate a nuclear bomb and get rid of kaijus once and for all. In the city, Dr. Newton manages to find a kaiju brain and establishes a connection with it. He discovers that the portal only opens for kaijus, and that even if the Jaegers get there, the portal will not open for them. Before he can communicate his message, the 2 Jaegers with Pentecost, Riley, and Mako reach the portal. By the time Dr. Newton manages to give them his message, he is too late because another kaiju emerges out of the portal, but this one is a much higher category than the last kaijus. A furious fight takes place and both the Jaegers get damaged. When another kaiju comes out of the portal and attacks the group, Pentecost detonates the nuclear bomb, killing himself and the kaiju. Meanwhile, Mako and Riley continue fighting and manage to tackle the kaiju inside its portal. With Mako's oxygen levels going down, Riley releases her pod and operates the Jaeger alone. He enters the other dimension and detonates the bomb there. He manages to escape before the bomb goes off and destroys the alien dimension. The movie ends with Mako and Riley waking up in the middle of the ocean, finding that they have managed to destroy the kaijus and their portal. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed the content. Like and share in the comments any movies you would like us to recap.